In this video, we're going to cover best practices around cancellation policies and alteration requests. This video comes from a private group that I manage called Cracking Superhosts. It's for my students, and one of our hosts had a very specific situation with a guest of theirs that they could make a lot more money if only they could change the dates for that guest. Naturally, cancellation would come into play, but the big brain play was to use an alteration request to change the dates without any consequence. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. So in this video, we're going to cover some things. Cancellation policies, how to choose the one that's right for you. There is a trap door with the cancellation policies that Airbnb has that every host should know about. This will save you from losing a lot of money. We're going to talk about how to defend your cancellation policy when guests aren't happy if you go strict, which, teaser alert, I almost always go strict. And then we're going to talk about some cancellation scams. We're also going to talk about alteration requests, how to do them, and how to get the most value out of them, because it's a pretty effective tool to manage your calendar. Sean Rocky G, host for way too long by now. You guys all know about it. Let's jump in. Welcome back, Airbnb family. So two main topics, cancellations, alterations, requests. And so first, let's jump into cancellation policies. Now, like I said, I prefer strict almost always, and there will be a philosophy for why you may choose to do something less strict than strict. We're going to talk about the main reason why I would do not strict. There's like one instance that I would. So first off, the cancellation policy types are flexible, moderate, strict, super strict 30, and super strict 60. Flexible, they get a full refund until like the day of arrival. Moderate, they get a 50% refund if they cancel inside of 5 days, I think is what it is. And then they get a full refund if they cancel like more than 5 days or 7 days in advance. Let me just post the new updated versions. They sometimes tweak these, and I never use these two, by the way. That's why I don't actually know them by heart. Strict, anybody gets full refund within 48 hours of their booking, as long as they book 2 weeks in advance. And then 2 weeks out, they get 50% refund. If they cancel inside of 2 weeks, they get a no refund. But between a month and 14 days, I think they get 50%. Then super strict 30 is inside of 30 days, they don't get a refund. And super strict 60 is inside of 60 days, they don't get a refund. Now, some of you might go, wow, that's like super, super mega strict, right? But I want you to think of it this way. You have one log cabin in a ski destination. And everybody who goes to, say, this ski destination, like Park City, Utah, or Winter Park, Colorado, Vail, Colorado, these people plan months in advance. These types of people plan months in advance. So you have somebody who in October, like today, books for February or March of next year, right? We're talking 5 months in advance, they book your house. This is the premium type of lead time that you want for your house to get booked, and you only have one. So you don't have a second calendar, right, to get filled. You can't take another family for that log cabin because you've already contractually given away this property. You were obligated to host group A. You can't sell to a group B in case that group cancels, right? That's against Airbnb's terms of service. So now what happens if like January 15th, which is, basically let's say 45 days before the trip starts that they booked, they just cancel, right? Now, the likelihood of you finding a family that it will pay the same price for your log cabin is much, much lower because booking lead time in that part of the world tends to be 4 months out. Now you're scrambling last minute, 45 days in this one case would be last minute, to get your calendar booked again. And you're gonna have to drop your rate and maybe still not get all of the dates booked. So you're going to essentially lose money. We call it an opportunity cost because your property should have been booked, say at $500 a night. And when somebody cancels, if they got a full refund, now instead of getting 10 days at $500 a night, you might get 4 days at $350 a night. You lose all the extra money. Airbnb recognizes this relationship in the calendar. Hosts don't have the ability to overbook. So when a host has somebody lock up their calendar for months at a time, that costs money. And a guest should pay for reserving your calendar. For all intents and purposes, that should be equal. Now there are extenuating circumstances and other stuff like that, which can suck because they could apply and you could still lose money even though a guest booked your calendar. That is a risk that I really wish that we could mitigate better, but that is one of the risks of hosting. But in this case, Airbnb makes these strict cancellation policies because some locations need that level of protection, because allowing somebody to like willy-nilly book a premium property then cancel without consequence and effectively losing a host $10,000 or something is just not fair to the host. So with that TED Talk out of the way, let's talk into what's best for you. If you are in a place like Winter Park, Colorado, or Park City, Utah, strict at minimum. Super strict 30, super strict 60 sounds great. Now, the flexible one, here's where the trap door is, guys. You should never do the hybrid flexible / non-refundable. And we haven't mentioned non-refundable yet, but there's an option to choose. Like, you can give somebody the option of flexible and non-refundable or moderate and non-refundable at the same time. And if they pick non-refundable, they get 10% off. Well, the hack here that a lot of travelers are doing because they're savvy is they'll book your place if it's flexible, knowing that you have a non-refundable option, and they'll ride it out until everything else is locked into place, right? So maybe 3 days or 4 days before the trip actually starts, as long as they know everything's good and they know they're traveling now, right? Everything's locked in. They're no longer concerned about canceling. They no longer care if you're flexible. They'll cancel your reservation and then they'll rebook your place with the non-refundable and take the 10% off. So the non-refundable becomes like the price that they were always going to pay, but they're able to book your place flexibly in case they canceled. Instead of getting trip insurance, they just played you in your cancellation policy. So you should never do flexible / non-refundable. I really don't think you should do flexible or moderate / non-refundable either, personally. And like I said, I always do strict. And if you look at that Winter Park, Colorado example where somebody books a listing, months out and then cancels and can cause you loss, that happens even at the smaller level. Here in Dallas where I live, or in Philadelphia where there's like key events like 4th of July, New Year's, Christmas, Thanksgiving, just reasons why people travel. All of these types of dates will get a premium price, a certain time in advance. And when somebody books your calendar and then makes it harder, you have less lead time to get rebooked when they cancel, they should be paying some form of premium for locking up your calendar, for reserving the right to your home. And you should not feel bad about that. That is something that you as a host should understand. It's good that you have empathy for your guests and a heart for your guest, and you can do something for them. We're going to talk about something that I do for my guests when they, end up running to my strict cancellation policy. We do some concessions for them, and I'll talk to you about that. But don't feel bad about having a strict cancellation policy because somebody might decide that they cancel. And you know what a lot of times we find is, we find this in a lot of industries, not just our industry, but we find a lot of people will lie when they want money. Right? When they want money out of you. So if somebody books with a strict cancellation policy, then goes to cancel, and then realizes they're not going to get any money back, they will lie to get their money. People will do that. I've noticed a lot of times in the application process with new hires. Let's say somebody gets the job from us. We hire somebody to do housekeeping or customer service. Well, in our industry or others even, because I saw a recruiter post about this today, people who get a job and then miss the first day of work, or they're supposed to take a drug test and then they end up not going to get the drug test. They'll come up with some crazy story about how someone died or ended up in the hospital or all sorts of different stuff. It happens so often. And when I first started hiring people 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I fell for it every time. Because I was like, I'm going to be a jerk if I don't respond to that and I'm not empathetic to that. But when you realize that 70% of people that you hire all of a sudden have a family tragedy the day that they're supposed to start a new job, like that data doesn't make any sense. So as a company, you need to have things in place regardless of what story somebody makes up in the back end. That's just a parallel to our cancellation policy. So now if you want to be a cool person, right, you want to be a nice host, you have your strict cancellation policy because you know the value of your home and you know the value of your home getting booked. What you can do is you can offer them to try to rebook those dates. And you can offer to give them a refund out of that plan B revenue. This is what we do for people. Some people don't like that still because they just think they deserve a refund, but they should have read your cancellation policy. So it's essentially how this works. They cancel their reservation. When they cancel, then you can relist those dates and try to get those dates booked. If those dates get booked, then you can then give the guest a refund based on the revenue generated from that second new reservation. You can even tell Airbnb this is what we will do, and Airbnb will follow up with you to check to see how much money you made, and they will help facilitate that. So Airbnb will put notes on the canceled reservation and come back and collect money later, though they've actually done this. So this is something that actually works, and Airbnb does appreciate the gesture because it is still generous. You don't have to do that, but you can. On the topic, and something I think you all should know, this will happen very rarely, but if a guest is not happy with your cancellation policy, decides not to cancel the reservation, and then the reservation check-in date elapses, they are no longer able to get a cancellation, even for extenuating circumstances, because they did not mitigate it themselves. Airbnb will allow someone to cancel and then submit for an extenuating circumstances claim. But when somebody has possession of your home, and by having a reservation, this is something that's like super nerdy stuff, guys, but just hear me out. When somebody has a reservation with you, they have the right to your home. Airbnb's terms of service says that you cannot double book. You cannot create a new instance of that accommodation. You cannot sell that accommodation to anyone else while somebody else has possession of your home. And so since a reservation, a person can show up and use it anytime as long as that reservation is active. Even if they tell you that they intend to cancel, their intent to cancel does not count as canceling. And so since they have an active reservation with Airbnb, you are bound by Airbnb's terms of service to provide them that accommodation, to service that accommodation. Even if they never show up, you are bound to reserve that for them and let them have it if they ever choose to exercise their option to be there. So somebody saying that they want to cancel, saying extenuating circumstances, whatever they say, if the reservation date arrives and they have not canceled, they no longer qualify for a refund because they chose to exercise their right of possession even though there was an extenuating circumstance. If they claim there's an extenuating circumstance, they have to then cancel and ask Airbnb for the refund. They have to follow Airbnb's policies. And by holding your dates hostage to try to get you to honor the cancellation before Airbnb goes through their extenuating circumstances review policy is a form of abuse. It's a violation of Airbnb's terms of service. So you can just tell Airbnb that this person does not qualify for a refund, even extenuating circumstances, because they didn't follow Airbnb's policies. And they actually exercise their right of possession by keeping the dates through the reservation period. And that's actually how we fought this and have been paid for reservations where a person was not happy with our strict cancellation policy, decided not to cancel in order to try to make us suffer enough to go, yeah, you can just give us the dates back, right? They thought that they could hold our feet to the fire, and they didn't understand Airbnb's policies. Guests can be like that sometimes, guys. Just remember, we're in a business, and when you're in business, you will have all types of customers. Some are completely awesome, which leads me to the actual reservation in question that caused this video. Was actually an awesome guest, but some guests can do the other stuff that we don't like so much. So just be prepared. But know your terms of service, and you'll be able to defend against stuff like that. So offer a rebooking refund, but hold your ground. If somebody doesn't cancel before their arrival time, they're stuck holding the bag. Alteration requests, super cool feature that Airbnb has that a lot of people don't know how to use it. You can first, let me show you how to do an alteration request. Open up a person's message thread on the Airbnb platform, and then you can go to details for that booking. And if you're on the desktop, the details button should be in the upper right corner when you're looking at the message thread. And when you click details, it'll then open up a banner, like a vertical banner that gives you all the details. You scroll down and there'll be a change or cancel reservation link. Click that, it'll open up a new window. Click the change reservation option, and then it opens up this panel that allows you to change the dates, the price, the number of guests. I believe you can even change the listing. You can change somebody to a new property. Last time I did an alteration request, we could change people between properties, which was cool. And this can be important sometimes where, let's say something happens at your property and you can't host somebody at property A, so you talk to them about property B, you show them the listing, they say, yeah, I'll take property B, and then you do the alteration. Now, if you just move them to property B without doing a formal alteration request, the guest is entitled to automatically 50% off their entire reservation because they did not get what they agreed upon. So you actually need to change the booking agreement so their new place is the new agreed upon place. By putting them in unit B when they are booked for unit A is a host terms of service violation, 50% refund automatically. So please alter people's reservations if you need to move them from apartment A to apartment B. It happens. Now, what you'll notice here, the thing that matters for this guest, let me tell you the story now that we're here at this panel. This guest stayed for, I think, a couple of months in Ohio. And the guest was a ideal guest and said to the host, hey, everything's been wonderful. We're actually going to go back to California a little early, just based on some external circumstances. We don't need a refund for the remaining dates. We get it, cancellation policies and all. Just want to let you know we're going to be leaving 8 or 9 days early. Thank you so much. So this host is like, okay, but how do I get these dates? There's this big event going on this coming weekend, and I know I can get booked for these dates. It'd be awesome if I could actually book them again and make more money. And so they're like, how do I cancel this without getting in trouble? And so I'm like, well, sir, your option is to send them an alteration request, just change the dates, but make a mental note of basically here's what you could do. If you want to change the dates on a reservation without changing the price, when you open this panel, you'll notice that the price is editable. Double click on it and copy that number. Just copy whatever the current price is. Then go in and change the dates. That date change will then cause a price change. It automatically recalculates. We'll then go back in and paste the old price back onto there. So now, even though you shortened a reservation by a week, you then repaste the original price, and that way the dates will change, but the price won't. And this is what he did this, but he actually ended up giving the guest about $100 off their stay, which is like a little money. So they immediately accepted the alteration, got $100 back, but gave him back basically a week or more of his calendar, and everybody was happy. So these alteration requests will allow you to do cool stuff like that. Now, there is also a scam, a booking scam involving alteration requests that you need to be careful for. Other smart guests know there's two actually alteration scams you need to know about. One, guests know that if they push your reservation back beyond its cancellation window, they can then cancel it and get a refund. So your strict cancellation policy says if it's more than a month away, they get a full refund, right? If it's a month to 14 days out, they get 50%. Well, we've seen people, a couple weeks out when the cancellation policy starts to come into play, go, hey, I need to delay my trip. Can I instead, book these few days in November instead of October? And if you ever push back a reservation where it changes it from being 10 days away to 40 days away, that person can then take that reservation that's 40 days away and then cancel it. And because it's more than a month out, they do get a refund on those days. So they still locked up those dates in question, then you moved them, and then they canceled those later dates. So don't do that, is really what I'm saying to you. If somebody wants to future date their reservation, they cannot. That becomes your policy. Never push any dates towards the future, even if it's a day, even if it's 2 days into the future. Never push those days around, because you don't want a guest modifying the dates to take advantage of your cancellation policies and then game you for a refund by bypassing your strict cancellation policy. We tell people, well, we can give you a credit. We have a cancellation policy on these dates. You're reserved on these dates. We're not going to alter those dates in the future. But if you do decide to cancel these specific dates, we can give you a travel credit for those other future dates, right? And so we give them 50% off of the future dates that they go and book. And then this way, they still get some of their premium back, but there's no gaming us to be had. Another alteration scam, and this one's fun. People will book for a couple days, and then they will alter to try to get like a monthly stay out of you, right? So they'll show up, they'll book for a couple days, the card will go through for a couple days, they'll check in, they'll take possession, then they'll change their form of payment to some fraudulent form of payment that Airbnb can't catch in time. They alter the reservation to be longer than a month to get the calendar to give them a monthly stay plus, and then the credit card won't go through, and Airbnb will then go, we're having a hard time collecting money from this guest. Now, what'll happen is Airbnb will freeze up and say, if the guest doesn't pay, you're going to have to kick them out. Airbnb no longer takes responsibility according to their language on their accounts. They no longer take responsibility for that guest, and then that guest now has an active reservation where they did not pay, and then you've got to kick them out. And unfortunately, if you find a professional squatter, and this is their intention, then what'll happen is they will try to use the fact that they've got this multi-month reservation with you as proof that they are a tenant. This has rarely happened, but it is a legitimate scam that has happened before, so be careful. I do, just to give you more context, I do find that people who pay good money for a reservation tend to not be the type that squats. In this case, if somebody prepaid for like a monthly stay and their form of payment went through for their first month, those aren't the people you need to be afraid of. So a lot of you avoid monthly stays because you're afraid that somebody's going to squat. But if you think about it, let's say the rental market for monthly rentals in your area is like $2,000 a month, right? Just say there's no lease, non-furnished, $2,000 a month. But your place is listed at say $3,500 or $4,000 a month because it's furnished, all bills paid and stuff like that. Well, in that case, somebody who can afford you for $4,000 a month is highly unlikely to default on the next month. The world that has to deal with evictions and squatting tends to be more that like $800 to $1,500 a month range, all right? Not the $4,000 a month range. So a lot of you who are afraid of monthly bookings, don't be. But be aware that this alteration to be month-long after somebody just checks in for a couple days, that should be a red flag. Tell them they have to create a completely new reservation is what you should do whenever anybody wants to have a short-term stay and then they want to extend it to a long-term. Tell them we can't do that with this reservation. We cannot turn a short-term into a long-term, but you are welcome to 2 days from now book a long-term reservation. And once the payment clears for that long-term reservation, we'll give you the cleaning fee back since you're going to be paying for 2 cleaning fees. How about that? And that way you protect yourself from the loophole of the software. So if you have any questions about cancellations or alterations requests or have a fun story to share about a cancellation, it's a fun topic. We've had a bunch of really weird stories and maybe one day I'll tell you them because of course that's what this channel is for. Thank you as always for watching this video, guys. And as always, I'll see you on the other side.